This is exciting, isn't it?
Here we go, guys, in 5, 4, 3. Here we go.
It's time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Thank you for the good programming, and I appreciate the content and really enjoyed every moment.
It's a privilege to have you on your station and listen. It's good stuff. It's very educational.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Since you made it to Friday, by the way, happy Valentine's Day this Friday, February 14th, for those who celebrate, I thought I would start off with a little bit of good news before we go ahead and open up the phone lines, 773-763-9278, and the text lines. U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan is, while we are on the air today, going to hold a hearing on a lawsuit that is challenging Elon Musk's authority to run Doggy. While we are on the air, there's going to be a hearing in which Judge Chutkan is going to consider a lawsuit that is in front of her that says Elon Musk, this unelected billionaire with no security clearance, has no authority to run a government agency. Now, while that hearing is going to take place, it doesn't necessarily mean that right away we'll get some sort of ruling, though hope springs eternal, right? I mean, maybe she could decide that she needs to take the case under advisement, but until then, maybe Elon should be banned from any power over any government agencies. What do you think? I think that could work. I'm going to try to keep an eye on things, and if indeed there is anything that comes out over the news channels, I will try to share it with you. I will see if there are any updates. But isn't that interesting? Also, you might have heard of this one New York prosecutor. You know, Pam Bondi had one of her underlings tell the prosecutors in New York, oh, yeah, you know that corruption case you were pursuing against New York Mayor Eric Adams? Yeah, let's just get rid of that. Pam didn't say it herself. She had somebody else do it on her behalf. And the lawyer who was in charge of that got that request. And she said to herself, you know what? This isn't requesting that this be gotten rid of for any legal grounds. I am being asked to get rid of this on a purely political basis. Her name is Danielle Sassoon, and she was a lawyer in the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office, and she has resigned rather than obey an order that she got that said drop the corruption case against Eric Adams. And here's the thing. She's no bleeding liberal. She's a member of the Federalist Society. She was appointed by Donald Trump in his first presidency. She's a member of the Federalist Society. She's a conservative queen. And she said no. She clerked for Antonin Scalia. She said no. So then they went to the public integrity section of the DOJ and said, okay, you guys are going to be the ones to dismiss this case. The two men who were in charge of the public integrity section in Washington also resigned rather than follow what they felt was an inappropriate, illegal, politically based law order. Several hours later, we've got 3 resignations already, kids. You count them up? Hours later, 3 other lawyers in that same unit also resigned. That's 5. And there are, at least as far as I can find right now, there are rumors, unconfirmed rumors that haven't been confirmed by a major news outlet, but supposedly the 22 remaining lawyers in the public integrity unit were called into a room, and it was said to them, which one of you is going to sign off on dropping this case against Eric Adams? Because I got to tell you, if nobody in this room is going to sign off on it, all 22 lawyers in this room are being fired. That is the rumor of what took place then. Nobody's been able to confirm it, but there are several people, including Democratic lawmakers, who confirm that they were also told that this is what was happening. You may not be old enough to remember the Saturday Night Massacre. Richard Nixon wanted his DOJ to do some he wanted lawyers associated with the government to do some what they perceived of as political and illegal things. And the top guy wouldn't do it, he was fired. The next guy wouldn't do it, he was fired. The next guy wouldn't do it, he was fired. And finally they found somebody who would do what Nixon wanted. By the way, the guy who agreed to do what Nixon wanted was a guy by the name of Robert Bork, who was later nominated to be on the Supreme Court, one of the few times that the Senate has actually refused to seat a presidential nominee for the Supreme Court. As a matter of fact, for a while, the expression to get borked, oh, I was borked, meant that you were shot down for something, a promotion or something you wanted. I was borked. So this is not unheard of when principled lawyers come up against unprincipled politicians. We have 5 resignations so far and very strong indication that the remaining 22 lawyers in the public integrity unit are being pressured, that at least one of them has to step forward and sign off on quashing all the charges against Eric Adams, the New York City mayor, who the Trump, Danielle Sassoon, she said in her letter to Pam Bondi, look, there is credible information that this guy is corrupt. Credible information. Lawyers don't, here's the thing, lawyers don't like to bring cases they can't win. Yeah, nobody likes to bring a case to court and lose. So for them to bring corruption charges against Eric Adams means that they already have enough evidence that they believe they can get a conviction, because if they don't believe they can get a conviction, they don't go to court. Danielle Sassoon basically said to Pam Bondi, look, I believe this is a winning case. I believe that this man, I believe we have enough evidence against this man to win this case in court. I believe that I'm being asked to drop this case for political reasons, reasons that have nothing to do with the law. So we now have 5 resignations and a rumor that the 22 other lawyers in the public integrity section are being told that if somebody doesn't step forward to sign off on the paperwork to drop the charges against Eric Adams, all 22 of them will be fired. If there is any information on that breaks while we're on the air, whether there's suddenly 22 people being fired, I will let you know. You got a lot to keep up on. Also, There's an article that was shared with me. It was a gift I was given from the New York Times because I refused to subscribe to them anymore. 6 reporters did a big deep dive into why Tom Tillis voted for Pete Hegseth after promising the former sister-in-law's friend that if she came forward, he would definitely vote to defeat the nomination. It's nothing that should surprise you. Donald Trump called him up and threatened him. So he changed his vote. This is a guy who is described as being close to retirement. He's very wealthy. His wife has a very successful career. This is not a guy who would have been signing up for SNAP benefits had he gotten primaried and lost. He folded. He's a coward. He folded. Did he think that he was going to do all this and Donald Trump wasn't going to threaten him? Oh, I don't want to be primaried. I like my job. It's so cushy and I feel so powerful. Yeah. Danielle Sassoon, much younger, decided to take a principled stand. Apparently that was not something Tom Tillis was capable of. So much more to talk about. J.D. Vance spoke. Oh, God help us all. J.D. Vance spoke to a group of European leaders at a conference in Germany, and he basically scolded them all. I've got a couple of people from the Democratic side of the aisle who were willing to share their thoughts about Mr. Hegseth and what he had to say. One of those people is Representative Seth Moulton, Democratic congressperson from Massachusetts. He was at that Munich security conference, and the Politico magazine had a gathering they called Politico Pub, and it was a bipartisan presentation. Democrat Seth Moulton was one of the people there. He was part of a bipartisan congressional delegation that was part of a panel discussion in that Munich security conference. He was asked at the Politico Pub what his reaction was to the speech that J.D. Vance delivered, where J.D. Vance basically scolded the people, or at least the leadership, of Europe. Listen to Seth Moulton.
Well, by the speech, I assume you're referring to the lecture that Europe just got from the vice president. And, look, we're here up on a bipartisan panel. And I think it's important to emphasize many of the things that we share in common in the places where we agree, not just the places where we differ. I agree with the vice president that you should respect election results. I agree with the vice president that you shouldn't jail your political opponents. I agree with the vice president that you shouldn't censor the media. The problem is that this vice president has been unwilling to even say publicly he respects the election results from 2020. Donald Trump said just yesterday that the members of the January 6th committee, his so-called political opponents, should be jailed. And they just kicked the AP out of the Pentagon. So what I heard was a very hypocritical lecture where, I agree with Dan. There is a lot of things you could agree with in the speech, but the hypocrisy was unbelievable. I don't think I've ever heard a more hypocritical speech in my life. But I also think it's important what Dan said about our shared values for Ukraine. And we've heard some of that from the vice president. We heard it yesterday. But talk about taking leverage off the table. When you say to Ukraine, you're not going to get all your territory back, when you say to Ukraine, you're not going to be a part of NATO before the negotiations even start, that's just unbelievably bad negotiating. And it's certainly taking leverage off the table.
Yep. There was another Democrat who was part of that Politico pub presentation at the security conference in Munich, Germany. She also was distressed by what she felt was an embarrassing, scolding speech on behalf of J.D. Vance. Yeah, you guys shouldn't, nobody should go after the media and everybody should be honest about elections. Really, Mr. Vance? Really? Tell me, do you just talk the talk or do you actually walk the walk? Chrissy Houlihan is a Democratic congressperson from Pennsylvania. She actually went a little farther than Seth Moulton in her remarks commenting on the J.D. Vance speech at this Munich security conference. Listen to Democratic representative from Pennsylvania, Chrissy Houlihan.
I was enormously disappointed by the speech. It was in no way, shape, or form what I would have hoped for from the Vice President of the United States of America. And why was that? He spent no time talking about Ukraine. He never once said the word Ukraine or Russia, as far as I remember. And rather, he spent the time, curiously enough, criticizing the European continent for the very things that we in the United States struggle with ourselves. And I felt like it was sort of a pot and kettle situation, where I felt like I wasn't sure why that moment in our history, our collective history, needed to be about that subject. I felt like it needed to be about whatever the Wall Street Journal article you were talking about was. I feel like that's much more appropriate than the language that was here. So I walked away, to be honest, feeling, and I'm going to say it out loud, I felt like that I am sorry. I'm sorry for that speech for the continent of Europe, and I'm sorry for a significant population of America, maybe the majority of America, who I think will be disappointed with the tone of that speech.
Well, we're just disappointed with J.D. Vance in general. I mean, I suppose he could have softened his image with a speech like that if it hadn't been utterly hypocritical and based in nothing. Yeah. Again, it is Friday. We are going to spend the first half of this show reading your texts, taking your calls. Let's get started with that right now. Steve from Glenview is on the line. Hi, Steve.
Hello, Joan. Can you hear me?
I can. Go right ahead.
Great. Good to talk with you again. This is kind of on topic. I think most Americans will admit that we need to reduce the size of government and we need to look at budgets and all that stuff that we all have talked about. But there's a way to do it. And it's appalling to me that government workers have been so disrespected. These are human beings with families and careers, and they've been given, for example, 2 hours to get out of their office, or they've been fired by email, and then the MAGA folks kind of chuckle about it and think it's funny. And we've allowed, basically an unelected gazillionaire megalomaniac run the show and run rampant. And for example, if you take USAID, we all know that there's a bloated bureaucracy and excessive spending with USAID, but why would we want to throw the baby out with the wash? What's wrong with just telling these directors of these agencies, you have 30 days to clean this up. You have 30 days to give us your plan to reduce your headcount and budget. We'll come back in 30 days and we'll talk to you. And if we aren't satisfied, then we go from there. But there's a humane and logical way to do this. And
well, of course.
It's really insulting.
Let's say you're the CEO. You make a great point. Let's say you're the CEO, the newly appointed CEO of CNN, and you decide that CNN there must be, you want to cut the budget, there must be waste, there must be bloating. Do you tell all the anchors to go home and take CNN off the air so that you can do a deep dive? Because that's what they did with USAID. It wasn't just, we're going to do an audit, we're going to look everything over. It was like, no. We're going to take CNN off the air. We're going to tell Jake Tapper to go home. And then, because we don't want anybody interfering with our efforts to really do a deep dive into the budgets and everything. So, just go home for a few weeks and we'll figure it all out. We'll figure out, what maybe if there's waste here or waste there, and then we'll figure out a solution. And then maybe a month from now, we'll bring you all back and we'll go back on the air again. That's what Elon Musk and his flying monkeys are trying to do.
Yes, and you're right. And I think also there's another angle to this too, Joan. This effort to cut these agencies is not all altruistic and about just reducing headcount and budget. This is basically ideological and political. These folks are going after every single social program related, agency that they can. I mean, it's very obvious what they're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And, I think Mr. Musk is going to overdo his stay here. I think there's a lot of people that are, obviously we all know are beginning to question, the way he operates, extra legally. And it's disturbing to me that one of the reasons I think the MAGA crowd is doing this is because they just literally don't want to repair the house. They want to burn it down. And they don't respect constitutional issues and institutional guardrails. That's the frightening thing about this, because if the courts don't stand up, then it's really a slippery slope. I mean, where do
Absolutely.
we go from there?
Absolutely.
And these guys, and they're going to push as far as they can until somebody says stop. And I hope to God that it's sooner than later, so we can save whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Steve from Glenview, thank you so much for the call. Before I go back to did you want to make another point? Oh, okay. Before I go back to the phone lines, I got a text from somebody. How can Trump ban the Associated Press from the Pentagon? I thought there's freedom of the press, First Amendment. That was from Jay from Skokie. Well, remember, he did something very similar in his first term as president. He didn't like and still doesn't like Jim Acosta, former reporter from CNN. And he refused to let Jim Acosta in the White House press briefing. And there was also a furor because when Donald Trump was in office, he's the one who kicked out some of the mainstream media so that some of those seats could go to reporters from Newsmax and OANN, people who were never considered legitimate news outlets before Donald Trump's first term. And suddenly the legacy media folks were being shown the door to free up some seating for the people who Donald Trump knew would be more friendly to him. So he has a history of doing this. And as a matter of fact, it is believed that to placate Donald Trump, that's why CNN decided to take Jim Acosta off of his very popular, ratings successful show on CNN in the mornings. They wanted to move him to, he was going to do a show that was going to be on from midnight to 2 a.m. They were going to bury him. And instead, after thinking about it, Jim Acosta decided to just quit. He now has a Substack he's trying to do on his own. And Donald Trump posted on his social media how it was great that a horrible reporter, that Jim Acosta, was kicked out of the door. Still hates Jim Acosta. And CNN showing really remarkable bravery there. Oh, I'm sorry. No, actually, they didn't. Let's take a break. We'll be back with more calls after this.
There's no excuse to miss Joan Esposito.
It's number one on my stereo.
Live, local, and progressive. You can listen to her daily at WCPT820.com on your computer or phone.
If Cage Walls Could Talk with Jody Whittaker.
I actually learned about you and your sanctuary because of Rocky the Coyote. For those who don't know, Rocky was found as a pup. He was found by some people who thought he was a puppy, and they took him to a local animal shelter, and they realized he was a coyote. He was transported to Illinois' Cook County Forest Preserves and has since been stuck in a tiny cage for more than 5 years now. Pat has graciously and generously offered Rocky a forever home at the Wild Animal Sanctuary, so thank you so much for that.
If Cage Walls Could Talk, Saturdays at 5.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Want to join the conversation?
I'm going to say exactly what I think here.
Got something to say?
Everyone needs to hear what I got to say.
Call Joan now at 773-763-9278 and join the conversation. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820.
We are reading your texts and taking your calls. It is Friday. We talk about the news of the day and discuss things with you for the first half of the show. I just got this text. I have emailed and called my senators, my House reps, my governor, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator Chris Murphy. The only other weapon Democrats have is on March 14th. That, by the way, is when the current budget runs out and we are faced with a government shutdown. That's just my aside. Where was I? The only other weapon Democrats have is on March 14th, the voting in Congress of once again raising the debt limit. Well, what they need to vote on by the middle of March is a new budget. Raising the debt limit may or may not be a part of that package. Donald Trump wants to raise the debt ceiling, and that's something that Republicans have always been opposed to doing. So, yeah, Mike Johnson may decide that can't be a part of any budget or it won't get passed. But that's another aside. I am sorry. I digress. Democrats need to not sign off on the debt limit and let government shut down. Sorry, federal workers, but these are desperate times. If only Democratic demands are met, like reopen USAID, kick out Elon Musk, reopen the FBI and the CIA, fire Pam Bondi, fire Pete Hegseth, et cetera, et cetera. Let this country crash. This president has no guardrails. Democrats are torn. On the one hand, there is a belief in Democratic circles that, you know what? People voted Donald Trump in, and maybe they should feel the pain. You know, all those farmers in Kansas who now all of a sudden are waking up to the fact that USAID isn't going to be buying their crops and they're in trouble. All the people in Huntsville, Alabama, who are opening up letters from their utility telling them that they now have to pay a $100 surcharge because federal money that used to pay part of the costs is no longer available, and they are going to be making up the difference. Or maybe it's the leadership of the Venezuelans in South Florida who are suddenly very angry that they are considered deportable when they were promised, I tell you, they were promised by Republicans that they would be exempt. He's not going to send me back. I'm a good immigrant. Don't you know? I'm a good immigrant. They're saying that we're going to be left alone. I have several bridges I would like to sell you. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our good friend Earl from Hyde Park is on the line. Hello, Earl. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, Joan. And happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
And all the women out there, happy Valentine's Day. I think so far that what I've been hearing is quite on fact. It needs to be said every chance you get. But what I want to caution you and your listening audience is this hypocritical group of people that he's putting in these positions who are going to follow their orders, marching orders, and doing something else, are like musicians. They want you to see what they're doing with the right hands and not pay attention to what they're doing with their left.
Yeah, Donald Trump is a master of that. He's an absolute master of that. There's this terrible thing I'm trying to accomplish. I know, I'll do something crazy and outrageous, and then the media will be reporting on that. Yay!
Exactly. And also, our President A.B., I don't know which letter you want to give him, Elon, is also cutting agencies that are going after his companies. Are investigating his companies. Yes.
There are two government agencies: the SEC, the Security and Exchange Commission, and I'm blanking on the other one. And there were two government agencies that were investigating Elon Musk for possible civil or criminal charges. And guess what? Those investigations, they're gone now. They're gone now.
Yep.
They have been short-circuited.
That's what I was saying, exactly. So all of these flamboyant things that they're doing to get attention is really hiding the fact what they're really trying to do is protect themselves and protect their good money so they can keep making money.
Yep.
And the sad thing about it is that I really think they are going to damage our social safety net. I don't really think they care about poor people. I don't think they care about people of color.
You know, if Elon Musk cared about poor people, he invested $227 million in the campaign to get Donald Trump elected. He has, since Donald Trump was elected, by some estimates, he has reaped billions of dollars in profits from various ventures, whether it's crypto, whether it's one of his companies. He has reaped, if you just took the amount of profit he's made since Trump was elected, don't even touch his principal. Don't touch the money Tesla pays him. Just the amount of profit he's made since Donald Trump was elected. That is enough money to literally feed every hungry person in the United States. It is enough money to lift every single person in the United States out of poverty. But is Elon Musk going to do any of that? Of course not. Of course not.
No, they're not. No, they're not. Neither one of them care about the poor people. Remember, Donald Trump was famously said that I like my uneducated people.
Yep.
He wants to keep the Republican Party really wants to keep us uneducated because they want us not to know, such as about the 2025 movement and other things that like they're doing, trying to do with the women that have to show some kind of
with the Chip Roy's SAVE Act, which purports to do away with illegal voting, of which study after study after an audit after audit after audit has found there is almost no illegal voting. And what attempts there are, like if somebody tries to register to vote who's not legally able to register to vote, those efforts are caught. And those people are weeded out of the system. But Chip Roy's SAVE Act has a lot of other provisions that will make it incredibly hard for poor people, for minorities, and even women to vote, even women, because it's going to be one of the big things they're going to look for is, does all your documentation have the same name? Well, when if a woman wants to take her husband's name when she gets married, there's a lot of paperwork. Your Social Security card, your passport, your driver's license. You have to get all of that changed to the new name. And if you don't, if you have two pieces of documentation and one has your maiden name and one has your married name, guess what? You don't vote.
So you're right on point, and thank you for filling in exactly what I was talking about, and I don't want you listening on to remember and forget that whatever this outrageous thing they're doing that we see, there's always going to be more harmful things or things that are more beneficial to them going on in the background.
Yep.
And so we have to try to figure out what is also going on in the background and not just focus on some of the outrageous stuff they do to get attention, to draw our attention from other things that they're doing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Earl. Really appreciate the call. We are going to take a break. We're going to go back to the phone lines, and I'll read more of the texts coming in right after this.
Podcasts of Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, and Amazon. Just search for Joan Esposito.
Hey Google, play WCPT.
Streaming Chicago's progressive talk from TuneIn.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
One of our texters just sent me something that I can't tell where it was posted. It looks like it might be the Guardian or New York Times. Remember I told you that 5 people had resigned rather than sign off on the paperwork to drop the prosecution of Eric Adams, and that the Public Integrity Unit as a whole, 22 lawyers who were was called into a meeting and said that if somebody doesn't step up and sign this paperwork, the entire unit was going to be fired. Here's what the New York Times is reporting. The federal criminal corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams were thrown into further turmoil as a federal prosecutor reportedly agreed to file a motion to dismiss the case while there were 5 resignations when I went on the air. But moments earlier, a 7th prosecutor had resigned. So the tally of those who resigned rather than do this was up to 7. The prosecutor who signed the paperwork acquiesced to file the motion in an attempt to spare other career staff from potentially being fired by Emile Bove, acting U.S. Deputy Attorney General, former personal lawyer to Donald Trump. The news agency Reuters named the lawyer as Ed Sullivan, a veteran career prosecutor who agreed to alleviate pressure on his colleagues in the department's public integrity section of 30 attorneys, 2 sources said, after his team was given an hour by Bove to decide between them who would file the motion, because he threatened to fire them all if nobody did. This is a capitulation. This is a coercion, one of the people briefed on the meeting later told Reuters. That person, in my mind, is a hero. The whole section had reportedly discussed resigning en masse. The development came shortly after a fierce letter was made public from the latest prosecutor to step down, who said, in contrast, that any lawyer willing to file a motion to dismiss the criminal case against Adams on the administration's say-so would be a fool or a coward. You know, I understand what Ed Sullivan did. He's like, you know what? I'm going to take the heat for this so that the rest of you here can keep your jobs. But you know what? I think that is whether he thinks he's protecting people, and that's obviously what Mr. Sullivan thinks he's doing. He is showing these folks who want illegal things done that if you apply enough pressure, somebody will go along with you. I think Mr. Sullivan has made a grave mistake. And I think, indeed, the entire integrity section should have resigned en masse. But I wasn't there. I wasn't privy to the decisions. I think Mr. Sullivan made a mistake. The last lawyer to resign said you'd have to be a fool or a coward to sign this paperwork. I'm sure Mr. Sullivan believes that he's a very brave man. But I think he has sold out his co-workers. He may have saved their jobs, but he has not saved their integrity. And what's the point of being in the public integrity unit if you have no integrity? I think that was a serious mistake on Mr. Sullivan's part. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our good friend Jim from Chicago is on the line. Hello, Jim. How are you?
Hi, Joan. Not too bad. As far as I'm concerned, democracy is a cadaver on an autopsy table.
Yep.
And I don't see how it can be revived. And just take this into consideration. In Madrid, you had Viktor Orban, you had Le Pen from France, you had the Prime Minister of Italy, all getting together. This is where fascism died in the 70s. And I thought it was terminated in the 70s, but apparently they're trying to revive it. But their version of it, this absolutism, and they're claiming that Trump is our man. If Trump could do it in the U.S., we could do it in Europe. But you know what's really strange, Joe? When they look at this generations from now, I would argue, I thought the Internet was supposed to be democratic. It was sold to me as a democratic device. In other words, every little person has an opportunity to gather some information. But this has turned into an instrument of death as far as the United States is concerned. When you consider the people controlling the Internet, and they have not a democratic bone in their bodies, and what they're doing to the United States is absolutely unconscionable. I don't know how anybody can put up with this much longer. And think of the CBS, for instance, they were sued for $20 billion. Why didn't he sue for $20 trillion? I don't know why he stopped at $20 billion. Why not go for everything on Earth? Everything's being cowed here. Our press and the Internet, as far as I'm concerned, I don't see any hope for it. I thought that there'd be some intellectual people on the Internet that you might be able to go to, maybe a professor or something along those lines. This is absurd. But that's what I guarantee you, after I'm gone, that'll be one of the assassins in the death of democracy. Anyway, Joan, you have a great weekend. Thank you much.
You're completely right. I understand that. And those of us who were able to actually remember Donald Trump from the last time around, we saw this coming. We saw this coming. We knew that he had learned the first time around who were the people who thwarted him and how to make sure that didn't happen again. And the only way we could have put up any kind of a guardrail would have been for Republicans in the Senate to oppose his ridiculous, unqualified cabinet members. And apparently there isn't a single Republican, not even Tom Tillis, not even Joni Ernst, Republicans in the Senate who clearly knew Hegseth was a disaster in the making. How long is it going to be before Hegseth shows up and behaves inappropriately? You know it's coming. You absolutely know it's coming. It may take a while, and I'm sure the people in the Pentagon are not going to be the ones to rat him out. I mean, that's career suicide. I don't know. I understand where Jim's coming from. You know, one of our texters has been texted in something that I've been saying all along. I got this just a few minutes ago. For MAGAs to turn, the economy needs to go bad. High gas prices, high grocery prices, tariffs equal inflation. Musk wants to cut Medicaid, Social Security, Medicare. That's the only way. I agree. You know, a lot of the people who voted for Donald Trump, I think there's a number of reasons. First of all, I think racism. I'm not even going to comment on misogyny. But the idea of a black woman, that was a bridge too far. I think that had something to do with the votes for Donald Trump. I think the people who have not learned to watch what someone does instead of what they say, I can tell you, I'm your boss, I'm going to give you a promotion, and I'm going to give you a raise. And you're like, yay, me. But then it doesn't happen. But you keep waiting because it was promised. I said I would do it, right? Just because I haven't done it. There are people who didn't think that he would do the things he said he was going to do. And then there were people who just didn't pay attention. You know, like our good friend Roosevelt always says, you know, if you listen to Latin radio, Hispanic radio, it's pretty conservative. And if you only have one source of information and that source of information is giving you bad information, it's difficult to make good decisions with bad information. Just a little something I've picked up over the years. And then there are the people who don't think it really matters who's in the White House. Oh, they're all the same, you know. They're all the same. At least if I vote for Donald Trump, he'll shake things up. Whoa, dude. That may be the only voter who ends up really getting what they wanted. If by shake things up, you mean try to turn us from a democracy into a dictatorship, if that's what you mean by shake things up, then you may actually be the only voter who's getting what they want. Our good friend Bobby from Indiana is on the line. Let us talk with him now. Hello, Bobby.
Oh, hello, Joan.
Happy Valentine's Day, Bobby.
Yeah, well, you're the Valentine of the radio.
Thank you.
So, well, I've heard no more about it, and it really torqued me yesterday morning when our good friend Mr. Hartman had a little blurb that has set me off on politics and even supposedly our side of the aisle, that recently Mr. Jeffries had a conclave with the Democrats in Congress. And one of the big things was that they were all upset and yelling and pissing and moaning at him about the fact that their constituents were calling them repeatedly and asking them and telling them to do something about all of this.
Huh.
And they were being bothered by this.
Yeah.
And my question is this. What in the, the word, did we send them to Washington for as our supposed representatives? That is one of their jobs, is to listen to their constituents.
Yeah,
particularly when the country, quite frankly, like Jim, I think it's already gone irreparably. And people are beginning to say that now, they're doing irreparable damage, and that's what I think. And if...
Well, that's the sticking point, isn't it, Bobby? They're definitely doing damage. They're definitely trying to disassemble the bureaucracy and the government. But we are seeing the courts fight back and saying, no, we're going to put a stay on this. We're going to put a hold on this. This is illegal. So we've got that. We've got, just like in his first term, people are going to take to the streets. And you know what? The one thing that's going to affect the Republicans who are rolling over for him are not going to roll over for him if they think it means they're going to lose their job. You've got to remember, it seems these days like 99% of the people in elected office, they don't care about the country, they don't care about their party, they don't care about anything except hanging on to their job. And if there's a groundswell, if the grassroots continues to cause trouble, Republicans are going to figure out that they have to change or at least speak up once in a while, or they will be voted out of office. So I don't think the harm is irreparable. It might take a long time to fix, but I think we can. I still have hope. I still have hope, Bobby.
Well, I would say if these courts and this, like you said today, this Judge Chutkan with Elon, if they actually can hold things together for us, there may be a chance. But if they fail, then I would say goodbye.
Let's hope they don't, Bobby. And I have faith that if no one else can save us, maybe Elon Musk's son X can save us. He was the only one brave enough to put boogers on the Resolute desk and to tell Donald Trump to shush up.
Yeah, I heard him.
Apparently, he also said to him, "You're not the president." Oh, my God.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I was reading, I think it was in Charlie Sykes' newsletter, where he said that not only did he tell the president to shush up, but he definitely wiped his boogers all over probably the most famous desk in the world. Bobby, I got to get to the news. Thank you for the call. For those people who are waiting on the phone lines, hang on. We are going to continue to take calls when we come back from the news. We'll do that right after this.
You're the only voice of reason on the radio.
You give me hope.
Having listened to you every day.
Thank you for your clear insight.
Always felt a little bit smarter.
I listen to you every single day. I keep coming back to this station, and thank you for what you do.
On WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter.
Time for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Joan, as always, exceptional work from you from, your TV days all the way up to today. You're truly exceptional, and thanks for this great show you have.
It's time for Joan Esposito on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
It is Friday, which means you have survived another week. That's the good news. We also spend the first half of the show taking your calls and reading your texts. Text line's pretty feisty today, I gotta say. Let's go to the phone lines. Stan is on the phone from Champaign. Hey, Stan, thanks for the call.
Hey, Joan, thanks for taking my call. I've been listening to you since your first day on WCPT.
Wow, thank you for being with me all 6 years.
And I called in once before. I'm not sure you liked what I had to say, but I did. Anyway,
okay, well, I'm ready. Hit me with it, Stan.
All right. What happened to Trump's desire for people to be given raises and advancements in position through merit rather than longevity? What happened to Trump's going to have the best people for his cabinet, only the best people, and he chooses a guy like Pete Hegseth, who is got out of the military as a major. He couldn't find a 3 or 4 star flag officer to take that position. And what about Bobby Kennedy? He's not a doctor. He's never been, never managed hardly anybody, just like Hegseth, and he can't be the best person for that job either.
You wouldn't think so, would you, Stan? You wouldn't think that it would be that hard to find people who are qualified. But see, I think that's the point, actually. If you get somebody whose only qualification is that they are fiercely loyal to you, that's the only thing that makes sense to me, Stan. He doesn't want somebody who knows, who can run the $800 billion military budget efficiently. He wants somebody who, if he picks up the phone and says, do this, their response is not, well, that's not legal, or we can't do that. But the response is, yes, sir. If you know what, I would be happy to see people hired on the basis of merit and expertise, just like you. But like you, I also don't see it happening.
Oh, no. I agree with you 100%, Joan.
Well,
so
I'm glad, Stan.
I don't know what we're going to do, but
we have, after all these years, if you say that I didn't like what you had to say before, I'm glad after all these years, Stan, we are now on the same page. I just wish it didn't take this mess that we've got in Washington to bring it about. But thank you so much for the call. Hey, don't wait 6 years before you call in again, okay?
Can I tell you one other thing?
Sure, real quick. Go ahead.
All right. 6 years ago, I listened to your first show on WCPT, and at that point in time, I didn't know who you were from Adam, and I thought, well, she's not going to last more than a week, and you have turned into a fantastic host for this show. You're absolutely the best.
That's very kind of you to say. And yes, it was. There was a learning curve involved, and it kind of it took me a while to settle in, but now I think I have a handle. Everybody does radio differently. Patty's different from me. Richard's different from me and Patty. Everybody has their own style, and you just have to figure out what that is and settle into it. And I thank you for giving me the benefit of the doubt. And the fact that you think that I have gotten better at my job, that means a lot, Stan. Thank you. And what a nice compliment to get on Valentine's Day. It's almost like it's a Valentine. Let's go back to the phone lines. Greg is on the line from Lake in the Hills. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Joan. Yeah, I'd have to second what Stan said, not trying to steal his thunder, but I've been listening to you since the beginning as well, back when, what was his first name? K was his last name.
Dick K, yeah.
Yeah, Dick K. I just remember listening to you. I think you filled in for him several times on the mornings, and then he passed away. But anyway, but the reason for my call, I've got about three things. One is real short. When I first started calling in, somebody had brought up the subject of him canceling, some of these I think it was education they were talking about. But I think a lot of times what happens is you get departments that are starved, rather than fully funded, they get through the best that they can, the best deal. And then you get things like, for example, the IRS. You got the Republicans, as soon as they get in charge, they cut the funding for it all the time because they know that they're the people who they're working for, they don't want people looking into their private matters. They don't want to be audited.
Yeah,
that's my one thing there. And then the other thing is, what was the one thing that the Jan 6 crowd and Steve Bannon and all these guys wanted to root out? What was it? It was the deep state, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, where's the deep state now? Now that we need them, I mean, I'm looking for a couple assassinations here. I mean, people don't like me to say that, but this is exactly what we need now. You make a good
point, though.
where are they?
Ronald Reagan. Donald Trump complained that the deep state thwarted him and that there was like this secret cabal. Where are they now that we need them? Come on, deep state.
Yeah, and the thing is, when Hillary Clinton, remember when she said back in the 90s, she talked about a cabal that was after her? She was right. I mean, if you go back and you look up all those things about her and Bill, and then they had I forgot the name of it, there was a magazine that had these guys, and they went out of their way to destroy the Clintons. And I looked into it, and there was these guys, the Mercers, I think, was one of them. But anyway, that was a cabal. But my last comment here, because I don't want to be too long-winded, but I wouldn't mind seeing someone like Jim being Secretary of the Defense. I don't know his background, but at least we know he'd do it 1,000,000 times better than a guy like Steve or Egseth. I mean, I heard that guy rather than see him, because I can't stomach to look at him, because he's got that look on his face like he's the only one that matters and he's out to kill everybody. Mm-hmm. Kind of like I sound right now, but I heard this guy talking into. This was some people over in Munich, I think it was, and this was a public speech. This guy sounded like a real wimp out there talking, and somebody else brought up, I think it was Stephanie Miller, I was listening to her earlier today, it almost sounded like homophobic the way he was talking. And,
oh, yeah. Well, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, Pete Hegseth is the guy who you said women don't belong in combat.
Yeah.
And one of the first things Donald Trump did, remember, was fire the head of the Coast Guard, I think the first woman to ever lead the U.S. Coast Guard. And so there was all this, supposedly he's getting rid of her because she's not really effective. Interesting that the only woman to really lead an agency like that was the first one targeted. Yeah. Thank you for your call.
We are so lucky. We are so lucky in my lifetime, your lifetime, that women have finally been able to blossom, for lack of a better word, because our society said, it's about time, I'm just so sick and tired of this trying to put the jack in the box. They're trying to always push us back into the box with the humanity of America. Anyway, Joan, thank you very much for your show.
Thank you.
Love
thank
it
you
as
for
always.
The call.
Bye.
We are going to take a quick break, get back to the phone lines and the text lines right after this.
The Randy Rhoads Show.
Oh, congratulations to the Fox and Friends weekend morning host, who's now our Secretary of Defense. He's a veteran, everybody. I know, I'm a veteran, too. I'm pretty sure I wasn't on any of Kamala's short lists for any cabinet position. But, oh, my God, these pits, it's almost like, well, there's a word for it. It's called patronage. Right here, right now, on WCPT 820, weekdays, 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time.
This is WCPT 820, where facts matter.
Don't turn that dial. Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, returns right now.
A fair balance where the facts come out.
On WCPT 820.
Before I go back to the phone lines, I want to read this one text that came in. 57-year-old here. My father, Polish, was born in a Nazi labor camp. I have so many stories. Bottom line is, I am watching as many passive Americans blow off what is happening right now, buying into the rhetoric, just as passive Germans blew off what was happening back then. The Trump administration is not necessarily trying to eradicate a populace, but to take total control. Speak up to your neighbor. Speak up to anyone. Resist. Thank you. Thank you so much for that text. Let's go back to the phone lines. Raquel is on the line from Chicago. Thanks for the call today. How are you?
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. You too.
Well, I hope that you'll be able to encourage the people to go into the street with signs that could say this. Donald Trump, we want you to resign. If you don't resign, we're going to take you out, and because you are a criminal.
Amen.
Amen, yeah. And then I have another one, another sign that would say, Elon Musk, you are a thief. You just took some information, private information from the government, and you qualify to be in jail for life. It's a qualification when somebody does anything like that in the government.
Yep. I think that we're going to, Raquel, see a lot of signs. I think we are going to see a lot of protests. I've been getting different reports.
Tell them to resign. I want that they tell him to resign. Any country that doesn't like the government, go and tell them to resign. The Puerto Ricans here in Chicago to the government in Puerto Rico. And the Filipinas and their country took a dictator. We can take this guy out and put it in jail. He belongs in jail. Why this criminal is walking in the streets without being in jail?
When you put it like that, it seems kind of crazy where we are right now. Not that it didn't seem crazy this morning as well. Raquel, thank you so much for the call. And I hope that when you talk to your family and friends, you can get them to come around to your way of thinking. I don't know that we can pressure anybody into resigning. Maybe the cabinet. In Donald Trump's first term, a number of his cabinet had to resign when it came out that they were spending their government budgets inappropriately, shall we say. So I'm sure it's only a matter of time before we start to see that kind of ridiculousness again. Let's go back to the phone lines. Mike is on the line from the south suburbs. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Joan. First and foremost, happy Valentine's Day to you and Lady B, and bouquets of flowers to the both of you.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. You know what? I think in terms of Eric Adams, I would be too concerned, being New York being what it is, a liberal basin. I think that when his time comes up for re-election and, he's going to, overwhelmingly be defeated. And I think that the state's attorney in New York is going to, even though he got away on the federal side, I don't think he's going to escape it on the from state prosecution. I think this is just a matter of time. It's not a matter of if or when. It's not a matter of if but when. And then the other thing I want to just say is that, in terms of people who are, we think that this is kind of the end-all, be-all. The midterm elections are coming up, and I think that there's going to be a huge message sent to the Republican Party. People like Joni Ernst, who, from Iowa, the senator who I was just surprised that Mitch McConnell was the only senator who voted against, some of these nominees like Hegseth and Gabbard and Robert Kennedy Jr., half-brain, the guy who got his brain eaten by worms. But you can't make this stuff up. It's true.
No, you can't. It's ridiculous. And we've got Elon Musk, who's supposedly looking into government inefficiency. And Cable News was reporting that, I don't know where this one came from, but that he got some sort of $38 million contract for something. And Rachel Maddow found in the new defense budget a $400 million line item to buy Tesla Cybertrucks. So, ordinarily, somebody looking for government waste would not be somebody who is benefiting from government contracts. But you know what? That was when, in the olden days, when we cared about things like ethics and norms, and we don't seem to care about that anymore. That seems to be a thing of the past.
You're absolutely right. Have a great day, Joan.
You too, and thank you for the call. Okay. Let's go back to the phone lines. Our good friend Ron from Chicago is on the line. Hey, Ron.
Hello, Joan. Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy Valentine's Day to you, too.
Yes. The 97% of the illegal drugs come across the Mexican border, and less than 0.5% come across from the Canada border. So it doesn't make any sense why Canada and Mexico should both be paying an extra 25% tariff.
It doesn't, does it? It doesn't make any sense, except, and I've been trying to figure out, what was Trump's rationale for going after two of our most reliable trading partners? Why put them through the pain? And I can't really come up with a reason that answers it 100%, except maybe he was worried that he couldn't go after anybody big. He couldn't go after China because China would retaliate. And, his good buddy Elon Musk relies on China for a lot of his economic success. So I don't know. Maybe, did he go after people who he knew wouldn't fight back so that he could say to his base, look at me, I promised you tariffs and I'm bringing you tariffs? Because, the president of Mexico supposedly got him to lift the extra tariffs on Mexico by promising 10,000 military people stationed along the border. And I didn't read into the details on this, but Ray said he read something where she basically conned Trump because there are already 10,000 Mexican military folks stationed along the border. So she promised him something that sounded like she was capitulating when actually she doesn't have to do anything to make it happen because it's already happening.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yep.
Yep. And Mike Madigan will no longer get a $13,000 a month pension, so should we start a GoFundMe page?
Yeah. Yeah, well, Mike Madigan made an awful lot of money from his law practice, and also still, remember, Madigan had millions of dollars in a campaign fund that legally he can use to pay for his defense and his legal expenses. So even if he misses out on that pension, I don't think we're going to have a GoFundMe page for Mike Madigan anytime soon, because I asked Ray Long, one of the Tribune reporters who covered the 4-month Mike Madigan trial. I asked him about, whether or not it looked like Madigan was going to run out of money anytime soon. And he said, no. I'd forgotten that while he was in the House here in Illinois, that he had also been working as a lawyer in a very, very, very lucrative practice. As you might imagine, hey, we need a lawyer, and we also need some legislation in Springfield. I know, we'll hire Mike Madigan to be our lawyer. It's a twofer. It would seem pretty obvious to me that would be something that would make sense to a lot of people.
Right. And also, J.D. Vance said yesterday that there's a new sheriff in town. Yes, let's make a deal with Donald.
Oh, God.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you so much for the call. I got a text. We talked a little while ago with Greg from Lake in the Hills. He also texted in, perhaps WCPT could get a Mark Cuban to buy our station or WGN and hire Jim Acosta and others, maybe Alex Wagner, and then bring over Richard and Patty and me, and start airing MSNBC on WGN TV. I think, Greg, these are all fine ideas. These are absolutely great ideas. And as you know, and we've talked about before on this program, one thing Democrats haven't done over the last 10 or 20 years is invest in any kind of media. Once the fairness doctrine was dropped, that's when Rush Limbaugh became famous, because he could say whatever he wanted and not have to worry about being fair or balanced or giving the other side of the argument a voice. He said that was when he rose to prominence, because he could attack anybody, anywhere, anytime, and didn't have to worry about presenting the other side. Conservative, deep-pocketed folks, and sadly there are more of them that are Republican than are Democrat, not that there aren't any on the Democratic side, but investing in media has not been something that has been a high priority. I mean, you've got, Sinclair, the conservative company that owns local television stations. I think they now own over 200 local TV stations. And, you've got OANN, you've got Newsmax, you've got Fox, even, frankly, News Nation, which was started by the people who bought WGN and was supposed to be, fair and balanced. They were going to go for like a CNN kind of vibe until it was revealed that the guy who was actually leading the whole company was a major Trumpist. Remember how he had one of their first anchors sit down and do an interview with Trump? And then all of a sudden, the people who had been hired to run News Nation were all leaving because they discovered that there had been, without anybody informing them, there had been secret consultant jobs with former Fox executives. Yeah, there's lots of conservative media. Other than MSNBC, there really isn't a lot of liberal media. And we now know, because it was always like, oh, mainstream media is liberal. Well, you know what? Have you looked at the New York Times or the Washington Post lately? I'm not so sure I would agree with you, particularly with the New York Times, that they are any kind of liberal media. Let's take a break. We are going to be talking to Representative Cam Buckner when we come back after this.
Take Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive, with you on the go by using the TuneIn app on your phone. Just search for WCPT 820.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Now back to Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
We are pleased to welcome back to our airwaves Illinois State Representative Cam Buckner. He represents the 26th Ward and thought it would be a good time to touch base. Cam, how are you?
Joan, I am doing well. It's a pleasure to be back on the first time in this new year. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, since we last talked, there's really not much that's been happening, so I'm not really sure what we're going to cover. She says as she pounds her head into the nearest wall. You know, how are you coping? How are you keeping up?
You know, I'll tell you what, I am both optimistic and nervous at the same time. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the country. The political climate is rife with a lot of, I just think, bad policy, bad action going on out there. But, you know, I'm inspired by the people of Illinois and the work that we're doing here in this state. And I just want to remind folks that we have to be able to distinguish between rhetoric and action when it comes to the Trump administration. Donald Trump thrives on spectacle. His words are designed to provoke and distract and dominate the conversation. But I keep reminding folks that there's a difference between thunder and lightning. Right? Thunder makes a lot of noise and it's scary, but no one's ever died from thunder. Lightning is actually dangerous and it's deadly. And so we can't be distracted by what he says. We have to look at what he actually does and find a way to counter that through our policy and through our work.
Yeah. I think that's very well put. And while you were talking, I thought about that, being optimistic and nervous. And I think that's where I am these days. And I try to hang on to the good things that happen. I try to hang on to the stories about the people who are resisting and not capitulating. And I think we should combine that into one word. How about optivus? I don't know. Because, you know, like two words is too much for me sometimes. Yeah. But I'm going to be optivus based on Cam Buckner's advice going forward.
I like it.
There are some of the people who engage with me on this radio show are very concerned that Democratic leadership has not been as bold or as vocal or as passionate in resisting Donald Trump as they would like to see. What do you think about that when you see, especially at the federal level, what the Dems are doing?
Well, I'll say this. I do wish that that Democrats in Congress would have and would even at this point do more. I think that there is a very special role that they play with their proximity to the Trump administration and their ability to push back not just on nominees, but, Congress. Even though the Republicans have the majority there, I think there's a large role that the minority party can play in what we used to call obstruction for the other party, but really what it is protection of our rights and our values, right? And so they've got a real role to play. I think when we look at federalism and the way it really should work, We have the tools we need to push back against this administration. Congress has to do more. And I think on the state legislative level, now we are really empowered to be the true laboratories of democracy, to really, carry the banner to make sure that these Trump-era policies aren't seeping their way into our everyday life. And so I think there's a role for all of us to play. All of us can do better. But I think we, a lot of times in these situations, we're shocked that we're here. We got to stop being shocked. It is what it is. It happened, and now we have to be able to both be proactive and reactive in these spaces.
What are you hearing from your constituents?
They're scared. They're nervous. They want to know how this is going to affect their everyday lives. People are worried about kitchen table issues. They're worried about their children. They're worried about crime in their communities, right? And so the executive orders, the flurry of them that have come down, many of whom have, as far as I'm concerned, as an attorney, some dubious, legal stability, but nonetheless, he has signed these orders, and he's beginning to put things in motion. He's beginning to talk about, ripping back the Department of Education and what does Medicare and Medicaid look like, and how do we think about a post DEI and LGBTQ protection and reproductive rights protection. Now, all of these things worry people, right? And so they're asking, what are we doing in Springfield to Trump-proof this state? But let me be very clear. The work that we will do in Springfield this year and the work that we've done since I arrived there in 2019, we didn't do it because of Donald Trump, and we won't do it because of Donald Trump. We've done it in spite of Donald Trump. The work that we need to do there has to happen no matter who the president is. And, it can't be just focused on him. We are trying to strengthen protections for small businesses and school children, and making sure that schools are funded, and that our places of worship are safe, and that we have reproductive health options for people who need them. We understand that Donald Trump does not like that. That ruffles his feathers, but it's not our job to pluck him, right? It's our job to continue to do this work, and we'll be okay. We'll make it.
Yeah. We just had a bombshell of a conviction for longest-serving Speaker of the House in Illinois history, Mike Madigan. What are you and your colleagues saying about that?
Well, we've been watching. Many of us have been watching the trial very closely. It was a long trial. And it, once again, is indicative of the fact that the system works the way it's supposed to work. It was months of testimony and evidence and hearing from witnesses. And I want to first say that the jurors did a yeoman's job of some very difficult legal kind of parameters there, right? These charges were difficult. Some of the instructions were, up to 100 pages, right? And so,
yeah, I know. I thought, oh my God, if I were in that jury, I'd be there for months.
Yeah, no doubt. So good on them for doing their duty and taking it very seriously. That's the first thing I'll say. The second thing I'll say is that this is a chapter that is closed, and I'm excited about that. I came in Springfield in 2019 towards the end of the Madigan era. He was only there for a year when I was there. Since then, we've been able to usher in a new time in Springfield. Chris Welch is the speaker, and he's done a fantastic job in the last 5 years that he's had this role. Democratic caucus is very intently focused on turning the page and making sure that we're doing the things that the people of Illinois expect for us to do. And so hopefully this ends a very sordid chapter in Illinois' political history.
I didn't realize that you didn't. Time for me, Cam, is very fluid. Sometimes it stretches, sometimes it shrinks. I didn't realize that you only overlapped Mike Madigan by 1 year. I want to read you something that was excerpted in this week's Picayune Sentinel. That's the newsletter former Tribune columnist Eric Zorn started, where he writes about all things local. He has a little blurb from Chicago Magazine, an article called "The Next Mayor." I want to read you something. In The Next Mayor, this is from the Picayune Sentinel, and from Chicago Magazine. In The Next Mayor, Chicago Magazine's Edward McClelland analyzes the prospects of the potential 2027 challengers to Mayor Brandon Johnson in this order: Alexi Giannoulis, Susana Mendoza, Mike Quigley, Bill Conway, Anna Valencia, Janice Jackson, Luis Gutierrez, Cam Buckner, Brendan Riley, and Lori Lightfoot. McClelland has underrated Buckner, I feel, and I doubt Quigley, Gutierrez, or Lightfoot will run. Eric Zorn seems to think you should be much higher on that list. What do you think about that?
Well, this is a every 4-year sport for the city of Chicago, right? We elect the mayor. We like them for a little while, then we don't like them. We start figuring out who the next person up is going to be, and so it is. It's part of the process. People begin to look at what it may look like. We are hyper-political in this city, and so the fifth floor is the epicenter of the world for us, right? So people are always trying to see what's next and who's next. All of those people, every person you named on that list is a friend of mine who I've worked closely with. The mayor, the current mayor, is a friend of mine who I've worked closely with. And so I'll just say this. It is fortunate for us to have so many people that love Chicago, who I think are good and decent people and effective in their ways. And at the end of the day, whatever happens in this next mayoral election in 2027, we're a long ways away. But hopefully it's for the best of Chicago, and I'll just leave it there.
Oh, my God, so tactful. That's no fun. There has been reporting in Block Club Chicago, first of all, that Mayor Johnson said at a Southside church that one of the things that he did wrong is that when he came in, he didn't make sure that his people were leading all the agencies, and that there was going to be a big shakeup. And now Block Club is reporting that Jose Tirado, Andrea Kirsten, Jamie Rhee have announced that they are either departing for other jobs or retiring. They are the director of this city's Office of Emergency Management and Communications. That's Jose Tirado, who came from the police force and apparently is going to be going to work for Eileen Burke in the state's attorney's office. And then Jamie Rhee, who's the commissioner of the city's Department of Aviation, she said that she was, I think she's one of the ones who said she was going to retire. Alderman Brendan Riley said he thought that the announcement of her retirement was hooey. He said she loved that job, and there's no way she would walk away in the middle of the O'Hare renovation, that he believes that she was pressured to walk away. And then Andrea Kirsten, who was head of the Civilian Office of Police Accountability. Do you know any of those three people, Tirado, Rhee, or Kirsten?
I do know Rhee, and Jamie is the consummate institutionalist in the city. She's been around for not one, not two, not three, but four mayoral administrations. There are a handful of folks in this town who really know how Chicago works, the ins and outs in different agencies and departments, and she's one of them. And I think she's been a rock star. So I'm really sad to see her leave. I don't know, what the issue around her departure is, but I'll take her at her word if she says that she's going to retire anyway. I do take a little bit of umbrage with the timing during this O'Hare modernization expansion project, with all this going on with, the cities that we're competing with across the country, places like Denver and Dallas, when it comes to air traffic and making sure that we are bringing more folks and more planes through the city of Chicago. It is, to me, some troubling timing. But I hope that she stays close and stays around in civic life in Chicago. But she indeed is a rock star. And the other folks, I have not gotten to know them very well, but I've been impressed with much of the work that they've done as well.
Mm-hmm. Early on in his administration, one of the big criticisms of Brandon Johnson and his administration was that their communication was poor. That there wasn't much of it, and what there was not optimal. Let's just put it that way. And then there was the announcement a while back that Joe Calvello was going to be joining the communications office. He was the communications guy for John Fetterman and was believed to have played a strong role in Fetterman's success. As part of this Block Club article about people who are leaving, They also mentioned that this Joe Calvello, who hasn't even been with the administration for an entire year, is leaving for another job. As voters, you look at this kind of upheaval and turnover, and you wonder if this is what you're seeing publicly, you wonder about what is going on in the meetings where you can't see what's going on. I mean, the criticism of Brandon is similar to the criticism of Lori Lightfoot in that they came to this big job with really no depth of experience in doing a job this big, and certainly haven't been around City Hall or local government enough to really know who's good, who's not good. I mean, Brandon Johnson said, I should have had my own people in those jobs much earlier. But the argument is that he didn't really have experienced people to take those jobs. And at least when it comes to the Department of Aviation, I think the question is, does he even have somebody of Rhee's qualifications now to take that job? I mean, there's a learning curve, yeah, but there also seems to me that you have to be humble and you have to say, you know what? I love the people who got me elected, but, maybe nobody right now has the expertise to lead the aviation department. How does a politician blend that, yes, I was elected, I have the mandate, I'm the smartest guy in the room, but also balance that with, maybe there are some people who know these particular departments better than my people do. Is that too big a pill to swallow when you're elected mayor of Chicago, Cam?
Well, it shouldn't be. And to your point, Joan, the late governor of New York, Mario Cuomo, once said that you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. And I think that really is a nod to the fact that government work, municipal management, especially in the city, an organization, an institution the size of Chicago, requires a different set of skills than it does necessarily to win an election. And, many folks learn this on the fly, and I do think that no one is prepared for this job completely unless they've done it before. But the team you have around you is extremely important in this space, which is why, many people are asking and hoping that the folks who are now departing, hopefully, are replaced with people who understand the complexity of government. In terms of aviation, I'll go on record saying that I don't know that there's anybody in the country who may be better than Jamie Reed at this job. And so I don't know that the next person coming in is going to be able to fill those shoes. But for the whole of government to work, all of government has to work, and it has to work together. Municipal government is tough. I've worked in the mayor's office at the highest level, not in Chicago, but I left home for a little while to go work for Mitch Landrieu when he was mayor of New Orleans. And things I learned there just about the nuts and bolts of municipal government, they're powerful sentiments. It's powerful things that I learned in that space. So I think that hopefully in the next 2 years in this administration that there's some adherence to that.
Well, since we can't talk about your campaign for mayor, since we can't talk about that, what are you planning to hope? What are you hoping to accomplish this year in Springfield?
Sorry, I was on mute. So there are a lot of things that we're doing, and I'm really excited about in the state capitol this year. We're doing a lot of work around, density and affordable housing and moving communities forward, right? So we have I filed the Affordable Communities Act, which stops counties from stopping middle housing, so housing duplexes, triplexes, townhomes in places that need them. We've got a bill that is going to push away these outdated parking minimums that drive up housing costs and force developers to waste space on unnecessary parking. We're trying to make ADUs, accessory dwelling units, legal all around the state of Illinois. Things like that will hopefully draw more people here and find a way to deal with our housing crisis. We've seen in the last few years what's happened with places like Walgreens who continue to abandon low-income and rural communities, right? And so I found HB 3670, which is the Pharmacy Accountability and Access Act, which requires companies like that to explain while they're closing the pharmacy, how it fits their so-called corporate responsibility commitments, and to give a 180-day notice before closing and do a whole lot of things before they can just pull up their stakes and leave a community high and dry. So there are many things like that we're working on. One of the things I'm most proud of is I'm working with Anjanette Young. Many people know that name, on a no-knock warrants ban. We know that no-knock warrants have led to unnecessary deaths and the loss of public trust in policing. We know what happened to Anjanette. We've all seen the video of that horrid night, 6 years ago. And so I've been able to work very closely with her to put together some policies that will make Illinois the first state in the union to do some things to push back on some of the policy issues that made it possible for her to be put in the position that she was put in. And so there's a lot that we're working on. But I think the biggest thing really is the budget this year, right? We've got a huge budget, but we got a huge, budget shortfall that we're looking at with the drying up of federal funds. And so I've been fortunate enough by the speaker to be named as a budget negotiator this year. And we're going to do all we can to, one, make sure we're being financially prudent, but also that we're meeting our moral obligation to the people of Illinois.
Well, congratulations on that. I look forward to you doing the good work that I've seen you do in the past. And when we are ready to talk budget, we're going to bring you back, and you can explain it to me, but use very small words, okay? Just words of one, maybe two syllables tops. So just plan for that right now, okay?
All righty. You got it.
Thanks. State Representative Cam Buckner, one of my favorite people to talk to, represents the 26th Ward. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Attention, listeners, financial planners, CPAs, divorce attorneys. If you're wondering why your mortgage professional hasn't returned your calls, it's probably because they're one of over 165,000 mortgage professionals who didn't renew their license over the past 24 months. So if you're buying a new home or refinancing the one you've got, do what I did. Call Team Hochberg, our trusted local lender. In the past 2 years, while other companies have been shutting down, Team Hochberg has been adding loan officers. They're stronger than ever, and they'd love to earn your business. So let's review this. In the past 24 months, mortgage companies have closed, and over 165,000 loan officers have exited the mortgage business, while Team Hochberg has expanded and is stronger than ever. If you'd like to work with experienced mortgage professionals, do what I did. Call Team Hochberg, 855-563-2843, or go online, 56david.com. That number again, 855-563-2843, or online, 56david.com. Lower.com equal housing lender, NMLS 1124061.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive. Every weekday afternoon from 2 to 5 p.m. on WCPT 820.
I want to remind you that starting today, yes, happy Valentine's Day. Starting today, our members of Congress are on recess. They're supposed to be back in D.C., I believe it is Sunday, February 23rd. So your congressperson should be home. Hopefully, if you've got a Democratic congressperson, they have already had some kind of town hall, whether it is in person, whether it is by phone. But contact your congressperson's office and find out if they have something like that scheduled. This is when they're supposed to be meeting with their voters, finding out what people want them to do and how people want them to do it, okay? So now is the time. They have a week or 2 weeks? That looks like a 1 week long recess. Now is the time to make your voice heard. Speaking of voices, I've been sharing with you a news interview that Bernie Sanders did where he was talking about everything that's going on now and what everybody needs to know and what everybody needs to do. I want to share more of that with you. One of the things that he talked about was organizing at a grassroots level. That's what we've been doing, protesting. I've been hearing about lots of protests that are maybe planned for this Monday. It's President's Day. For some of you, it's a holiday. So maybe There will be a grassroots event near you. But Bernie Sanders was talking about this kind of organizing. He was talking about staying focused on what is important. Listen to what Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders had to say about this.
We've seen Trump deploy this strategy before. He did it in 2016, where he came into office on the back of promises that he would make a health care plan that was more comprehensive and more affordable, of a jobs boom that never materialized, a manufacturing renaissance that never materialized, of an infrastructure plan that never materialized, and now he's doing the same thing here. And so how do you square that gap, square that circle, basically, where you have him saying one thing, consistently failing to deliver, and yet the message doesn't seem to get through?
I think what we have got to do, which the Democratic Party is at the moment incapable of doing, is organizing at the grassroots level. And I'm going to be going around the country trying to do that, trying to get working people and young people, people of color, just the majority of the people to stand up and say, you know what? When 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck, when 85 million people have no health insurance, you do not need to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut programs that working families desperately need. Let's focus on the needs of workers. What do we need to do? We need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. You think Trump and the Republicans are going to do that? Ain't going to do that. We need to make it easier for workers to join unions. You think Trump and the Republicans are going to do that? No, they've actually neutered the National Labor Relations Board, which will make it harder for workers to get their union victory certified. Do you think Trump is going to do anything real about lowering the cost of prescription drugs? I doubt it very much. So what we have got to do is focus on the needs of working people. What are they? Healthcare system is broken. Childcare system is broken. Housing crisis of enormous consequence. Climate change is threatening the entire planet. And we can create a whole lot of jobs moving to sustainable energy. Stay focused on what is important to working people. Expose the hypocrisy of Trump. I think that's kind of what we got to do.
I agree. I think that's what we have to do. You know, I'd forgotten when Trump was elected the first time, it was grassroots that got the Democrats in gear to fight. We're going to do it again. We're going to take a break for news. We're going to be back with much more after this.
Remember when you get to work to hop over to WCPT820.com or the TuneIn Radio app and stream The Stephanie Miller Show. Weekdays 8 to 11 a.m. on Chicago's Progressive Talk, where facts matter. Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Joan Esposito, live.
Celebrating our power to bring about change.
Local.
Everybody has to work together.
And progressive.
I think you get the idea.
On WCPT 820.
She just took off her headphones. She just finished recording the current episode of the Webby-winning podcast, Sisters-in-Law. She is the host of Just the Facts on YouTube. And, of course, she is the author of The Watergate Girl. We are very pleased to welcome back Jill Wine-Banks. Hey, Jill, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for that nice introduction, because Sisters-in-Law had really tough things to discuss this week.
Oh, I'm shocked. Why? Everything is so perfect in the world. You know, I can't imagine. And then we've got, you know, J.D. Vance scolding the rest of the world because, you know, they've got to treat their media better and they've got to acknowledge elections. And I'm like, excuse me?
Yeah, it's been a really tough few weeks. I mean, ever since the inauguration, things are happening so fast that people can't keep up with what's going on, and figuring it out and seeing the patterns is important. And then motivating people to take action is even more important.
Stephen Colbert, I wish I should have looked to find a clip of this. Stephen Colbert on the CBS Late Show a week or two ago said that people were going to have to relearn how much they disliked him last time he was in the White House, and that he thinks that most Americans are now in the process of remembering, oh, wait a minute, oh, wait a minute, that's right, we didn't like him. We didn't like the things that he did last time around. It does, to me, this election was more demoralizing. I was shocked to my very core. Yeah. I mean, I was just stunned when he ended up defeating Hillary Clinton. But, you know, I mean, she did get more of the popular vote, and the Electoral College came into play. And, you know, by her own admission, she's not a great campaigner. But this time around, I think that we have to finally acknowledge, yes, there was a worldwide movement toward getting rid of incumbents. There is a worldwide populist movement, but I think there is also a huge amount of racism and misogyny in this country that we cannot overlook. What are your thoughts? How did you react differently to this Donald Trump victory as opposed to the last one?
Well, I would say the thing that shocks me and disappoints me the most is how many people voted for him, how many people believe him, how many people are willing to set aside any critical thinking skills, anything to see how much he lies. And I think I'm shocked that we aren't calling what's going on now a coup. Because it is a coup. He is dismantling government. He is violating the Constitution. He is violating clear laws. This impoundment stuff of I'm not going to give you money that I don't want to be used for the purposes that Congress appropriated them for. That's so clearly illegal, and it's hurting so many people that it just shocks me. And the thousands and thousands of people who are being fired despite civil service protection, although now they've turned to firing probationary employees, which probation, by the way, can last up to 2 years. But, of course, what they're doing is getting rid of anyone that was hired during the Biden administration. And they're not doing it based on, well, we need people to fill these particular roles because of what they do. And, of course, then they're going to fill them with their own people. It's not a cost cutting if you refill those positions with other people of your choosing. And we're relying too much on the courts to save us from this. I personally am going back to Watergate and saying it was public pressure. It was, in those days, letters, not emails, but actual stamped mail that was delivered to the White House in huge, huge quantities that led to Richard Nixon sort of doing a U-turn saying, okay, I'll give you the tapes. He wouldn't have if it hadn't been.
Really?
Or, yes, absolutely. It was, we got bags of mail and the White House got bags of mail. And he saw the handwriting. He knew that he could not survive politically. People were outraged that he was violating the law and refusing to obey a court order. And it's what made him change his mind. It also, I mean, you know, I'm old enough to remember the Vietnam War. And it was public protest. Public protest changed the outcome of that. That's how the war ended, was that the people in power suddenly realized that the people weren't going to put up with it anymore. So I definitely think that it's up to us to stop the nonsense that's going on. Start inundating every member of Congress. Make sure even the Democrats are energized to keep up the fight. And it's not enough for them to stand outside a government building and say this is wrong. They have to find ways around the rules. They have to find ways to actually stop this. And, I mean, the lawsuits have been very effective and are stopping some stuff. But it looks like, for example, the freeze on federal funds is being disobeyed. And he's still not releasing the money. And then he makes a blatant, let's talk about Eric Adams, who is being forced to violate New York law by allowing the immigration officials to enter Rikers Island, for example, and is promising to support their efforts, the federal efforts, in violation of New York law. And he may make an argument about, well, there is a little exemption in there that I can use. But that's not what this is about. This is about getting his case dismissed without prejudice, which means they're holding it over his head. If he doesn't do exactly what they want, they'll reinstate the case against him. And they are getting rid of the case. They're asking to dismiss the case. And, of course, we've lost 8 prosecutors so far who refuse to do it because it's not based on the law or the facts.
I don't know.
It's
I haven't seen
politics.
a lot of reporting on this, but one of my listeners texted in that there was a senior career lawyer in the Public Integrity Division, somebody by the name of Sullivan, who apparently decided to sign the orders to spare the rest of his fellow lawyers from being fired, which is what would have happened. And I don't know. I understand what he was trying to do and that he was trying to save jobs, but I think he made a mistake. And I think this is one of those instances, and maybe it's easy for me to say this, sitting here in my home behind the microphone, but this is the Public Integrity Group, and he's going to do something that he knows is inappropriate to save jobs. That doesn't seem very supportive of the overall mission.
I've seen the reporting very much like what you're talking about. And apparently there is some rumor that it is being done so that it stops the bleeding and doesn't leave the public integrity section completely denuded, completely empty. And because this is supposedly someone who may be eligible for retirement, and so he can leave and get his retirement, which other people will be let go and will have no financial protection. But I agree with you. You don't do this. It's what happened. Let's go back to the Saturday Night Massacre. Mm-hmm. Elliot Richardson was the attorney general who refused to carry out the president's order. So goodbye, Elliot Richardson. Then the acting attorney general was the deputy, Bill Ruckelshaus, and he said, nope, I'm not doing it either. That made Robert Bork, the Solicitor General, the acting Attorney General, and there is talk that there was a discussion about, to protect the Department of Justice, to keep everyone from being fired and complete chaos, that he would do it. And that there was a legitimate justification because both Richardson and Ruckelshaus had promised at their confirmation hearings that they would not interfere or fire the special prosecutor Cox without cause. And there was clearly no cause here, clearly no cause. So they said, no cause, I won't do it. Whereas the Solicitor General had been confirmed before a requirement to make that pledge. And so he didn't have the same moral limitation on doing it. And he could stop the bleeding at the Department of Justice. Now, he suffered the consequences.
Yes,
he was not confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. Exactly. So, and he's still known, and there were a lot of Bork jokes. His Bork is worse than his bite was a bumper sticker. There were a lot of, he suffered a lot of humiliation. And I don't know if his motivation was to protect the Department of Justice or just that he didn't care. He was following the president's order, even though it was wrong-headed.
Yeah. So that didn't turn out so well for Robert Bork.
It did not.
I said at the beginning of this show that I thought that Sullivan, well, maybe he thought he was protecting people. I think he made a mistake. The lawyer number 7 who resigned had made a statement that anybody who agrees to put their name on this paperwork dropping the charges is either a fool or a coward.
Yes.
I think Mr. Sullivan, who thinks he's being all noble, is going to find out that he is considered neither of those things. But maybe I'm being too hard on him, Jill. You know the legal ins and outs. What do you think?
I think the letter of number 7 was an extremely powerful letter. And what he said was, I didn't refuse to dismiss this case because the U.S. attorney did not ask me to do it, but had she done so, I would not have done it because it is morally wrong. It is not what we as and this, by the way, was another conservative Republican, as was Danielle Sassoon, the acting U.S. attorney who started this whole thing. She's a Federalist Society member. She is a longtime conservative.
Yes.
But she was obeying. And do you remember
she was appointed by Trump.
She was appointed by Trump, and although she was hired originally, this is so interesting, she was hired by Preet Bharara, Obama's U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, even though he knew she was a registered Republican and a member of the Federalist Society. And she's handled some really interesting cases. She was the prosecutor for the Samuel Bankman-Fried case, the big Ponzi fraud thing. And she also was for the Sarah Lawrence. Remember, there was trafficking of students. That particular that particular case she prosecuted. The defendant was Lawrence Ray. And so she's had some really good cases. She rose in the department really, really quickly to become the interim. And now, she knew she was only interim, so when she did what she did and knew she'd get fired, it wasn't like getting fired from a permanent position. But that doesn't take away the principled nature of her decision. In the same way, I mentioned Sally, what's her name? Sally Yates, who was the acting acting Attorney General, who refused to carry out the order to defend the Muslim ban and was fired because she wouldn't go into court and say that this was not a religiously based ban when it clearly was. And so she got fired, but she, again, acted out of complete integrity, and we remember her for that. And we will know the name Danielle Sassoon, just like we know Sally Yates' name, because they acted with dignity and with respect for the law and integrity. So, I mean, yes, I think I wouldn't have done what he did, even to protect the whole department, because it may take a complete implosion to get the people to pay attention and to insist that Donald Trump be impeached. Because what he is doing is, and let's call it what it is, it's a coup. He is destroying the foundation of our government. He's destroying whole departments. The picture when the day they started tearing down the sign for USAID was so sad to me, so awful. So, I agree with you. It was something I wouldn't want to do. And, we had the decision when Cox was fired. We weren't sure if we had also been fired. And if we weren't, whether we should resign in protest. And at that time, Archie Cox said, no, you should not, because that would be giving the president what he wants. He wants you to be gone. You know the case. You know the evidence. As long as you can keep on prosecuting this case, you should not leave. And so we didn't. And it turned out that we had been transferred to Main Justice and abolished as an office, but we were quickly reinstated because we didn't quit. And because public pressure forced the president to reinstate us.
Yeah.
So, again, people get busy, get out there in the streets.
Yep.
And for God's sakes, don't buy a Tesla.
Well, some of us bought one before we knew what the danger Elon Musk represented. I've been, since December, I've been looking to try to turn mine in and get something else. But sadly, I had just bought new patio doors. And so my discretionary spending for a new car is not at its height. So please forgive me, those of you who see me tooling around. Ray, my partner, wants me to get one of those bumper stickers that says, I bought this car before I knew Elon Musk was an a-hole.
I think you should do that.
Or actually, I was thinking maybe taking the positive route. I have a bumper sticker from the Human Rights Campaign, and I was thinking of putting that on the back of my car to let people know in perhaps a less a
more subtle way, more nuanced.
Yeah, without swear words, letting people know that's not where I'm coming from. You know, Jill, I was talking to somebody earlier this week who made the argument that right now we really only have two branches of government. We have the judiciary and we have the executive, because Congress has ceded its power to Donald Trump. What do you think about that?
I agree completely. They are completely irrelevant. They should just stay at home. Don't spend money in the offices. Just stay in your communities, because if you are not willing to defend the first power you have is the power of the purse. And if you are going to let Donald Trump say how money will be spent and to refuse to spend money that you have appropriated. And I'm sure you saw that this week $80 million was withdrawn from New York State's bank account that had been put there for protecting migrants, for housing migrants. It was money appropriated by Congress, put into the bank account for New York to house migrants. And now it's been withdrawn because Donald Trump doesn't want to house migrants. He cannot change the laws any more than he can change the Constitution when he said no more birthright citizenship. He can't do that. That's in
Not
the
with
Constitution.
a stroke of a pen. Oh.
He cannot. He can do it by going to Congress and letting Congress start a constitutional amendment. But short of a constitutional amendment, he can't do that one. And short of getting the Congress to abolish USAID, he can't just abolish it.
Well, here's the weird thing, Jill.
So many agencies.
He has a majority in the House of Representatives, albeit a slim one. He has a majority of Republican senators who, at least as far as the cabinet goes, own absolutely no real backbone in opposing him. So some of this stuff, like, I want to take back this $80 million that went to New York, you would think he would have the votes. I think he is not going to the legislative branch because he's sending them a message. I don't need you. You have no power. Unless you agree with me, I'm going to cut you off at the knees. He's telling them that, he doesn't need them. I don't need you to pass a law to do this because I'm just going to write it up by executive order.
And it's true that he doesn't need them, but he could use them and they would cave to him. So why isn't he using them? Why isn't he passing laws that would do what he wants to do?
Yes, why isn't he?
And I don't know, except it's a total power grab. And this business of what he's doing now to the arts, that's as disturbing to me as what he's doing to birthright citizenship.
Yes.
He has fired everyone who was on the Kennedy Center board and put in a bunch of idiots who have agreed, because he already announced that he was going to be the chair, and now they have made him the chair, and they have canceled a touring group of a children's show.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I'm hoping that someone with enough money will fund the tour, because I know I'd like to see what Donald Trump thinks isn't fit for a children's audience.
Yeah, I was reading about that this morning, that they had done a 4-week run of a show that they wrote for kids, that it had no mention of gay or anything like that, but it was about a little sea creature who decides they don't want to be a predator. They'd rather just be a regular fish. And, they were supposed to, after a 4-week successful run at the Kennedy Center was producing a national rollout of the show. And they just got a note that I'm sorry, we thought we had funding for this, but I guess we don't. There's no funding for you. So thanks, but no thanks. Also, some of the people who have been scheduled to perform have either been canceled or are canceling. Apparently, Issa Rae had a sold-out presentation where she was supposed to talk about Issa Rae, the actor and producer. She was going to be making a presentation, and she's canceled. A couple of their artistic trustees, Renee Fleming, have resigned. And one of the Republicans who had been observing this whole thing, said, well, the Kennedy Center, basically what he was saying was they kind of got hoity-toity and their tickets were really expensive. And I'd like to see more like country music and stuff like that, and I'd like to see, instead of people wearing tuxedos, why can't you have just people drinking beers at the Kennedy Center? And, my attitude is all the arts should be welcome at the Kennedy Center, whether it's country music and you've got a flannel shirt wearing beer drinking crowd, or whether it's Renee Fleming bringing some sort of highbrow tuxedo-wearing crowd in. It should all be part of the Kennedy Center. But somehow I get the impression that it's going to be solely what this Republican would like to see. No more A-listers. Too much Hollywood.
Exactly. No, it's horrible, and it's interesting. I went to see a opera last night, not really an opera, a concert by an opera singer, and she made several references to the support of the arts, and thank you for being here to support the arts. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was, to me, it was a clear reference to what's going on at the Kennedy Center. But, I don't know that for sure because I don't know what she was thinking, but it seemed to me that it was easy to interpret in that way. Yeah. And I think all artists, all performers, and I love rock and roll, I love country, I love bluegrass, I love opera, I love ballet, and I want to be able to see all of them. And the Kennedy Center has had really fine performances, and nothing that no one's forcing you to go see it. If you don't like what they're offering, don't go. So
seems so simple when you put it like that, Jill. Hey, when does this new episode drop?
Tomorrow. It's always on Saturday, and we talk about all these things. We talk about Eric Adams and the quid pro quo for his cooperating with immigration enforcement, and we talk about something that's very dear to your heart, I'm sure. Is there still a First Amendment when AP is barred from White House coverage because they refuse to call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America? Yeah. And, I haven't researched, and maybe I'll do this when we hang up. What would it take to legally change the name of something? I mean, we know that, for example, countries change the names of their cities. India has made the names, not the westernized names, but the Indian name. Mm-hmm. And so how do you go about officially changing it? It's not taking a Sharpie and saying, henceforth, I've just designated the Gulf of Mexico, which, by the way, has been its name for 400 years. Yeah, is the Gulf of Mexico. So he doesn't have the power to do that, and he can't force. The First Amendment says that you can't be forced to say anything, and you can't be prevented from saying anything. And if he can force the AP, which has 100 million page views every month, think about the size of their audience. And it's
Jill, I just realized we have run over our time. I apologize.
Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. I so enjoyed talking to you.
I so enjoy talking to you, too. Jill Wine-Banks, author of Watergate Girl, Sisters-in-Law. The podcast drops tomorrow. Thank you, Jill. We're going to take a break. We're going to be back with more after this.
The Randy Rhoads Show.
Oh, congratulations to the Fox and Friends weekend morning host, who's now our Secretary of Defense. He's a veteran, everybody. I know. I'm a veteran, too. I'm pretty sure I wasn't on any of Kamala's short lists for any cabinet position. But, oh, my God, these pits, it's almost like, well, there's a word for it. It's called patronage. Right here, right now on WCPT 820, weekdays 7 to 9 p.m. Central Time.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 a.m., WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
On Friday, as we wrap things up, I always tell you that you have an assignment, and the assignment is to do something this weekend that brings you joy. Well, just in case you don't have any ideas of what that might be, and you've got some time this Saturday evening from, say, 6 to 9, Tony Fitzpatrick and I have an idea of something that you might be able to do that might be able to bring you joy. Tony, how are you, my friend?
I'm fine, Joan. How are you?
I'm good. Also on the line with us is Valeria Terrazas. Tony, why don't you introduce Val?
Val Terrazas is from Garden City, Kansas. And just recently, right before President Moron took office, she became an American citizen after 30 years, after growing up and working and paying taxes in America. Her mom and dad are also from Garden City, Kansas. And, every time you hear this bugaboo and this fear-mongering stories about migrants, it would behoove you to actually run into some people who have migrated here and contributed greatly. Namely, Val Terrazas Ramirez, who is having her first one-woman show of her paintings at a VSG gallery on Milwaukee Avenue tomorrow night between 5 and 9 o'clock. A great many of them, in fact, I think all of them, are canines. They're all dogs, and they're just remarkable. They are physical, they are visceral, and they fit the time that we find ourselves in politically. They identify and locate that feral instinct in the American body politic, and I think they're incredibly smart. I've already bought one, and I'm probably going to buy another one.
Well, the painting that's on the invite that I saw is remarkable. Yeah. When I first saw it, I actually thought it was a photograph until I looked at it more closely, and it's really impressive.
It's remarkable when you have an assistant who's got like 10 times more talent than you do, We're sitting here in my studio on Damon Avenue, and her mom and dad are here. They just came up from Garden City on the train, Mario and Sonia. And, this is a really wonderful affair for their whole family. Val was the first person to graduate from college in her family, and now she's having her first one-woman show, and it is a knockout. I've seen the paintings. They're absolutely breathtaking.
That is the one that I saw on the flyer on the ad for the show is remarkable. And Val, I want to congratulate you on your citizenship. I think you did it just in time.
I think I got it, I think it had to have been a couple weeks before it was right after the election. So I didn't get to vote, but I was I covered my rear end on there. So I got lucky there.
Tell us a little bit of history. I mean, Tony gave us a bit of a sketch, but what would you like our listeners to know about who you are and how you've gotten to this point?
Wow, that's
no pressure. No pressure, Val.
No pressure. Question. I got that answer ready and studied for you. An important thing, at least in my time in Chicago, I've been in the art scene, helping a lot of other people kind of move their careers forward, and I was just about to hit a point where I was maybe thinking it wasn't something that I was meant for as an artist, maybe, because it felt like I was kind of always helping everyone else and never getting to step up and get to make the show myself. So Alan at VSG Contemporary. I've worked with him for many years, since 2020, and I helped. I was working in the basement of his house before he had an actual gallery, and we've been doing pop-ups since 2020, 2020-ish, yeah. And so when he got the storefront, I helped with everything from the floor up. And I think, I pursued my painting career in a way that I was doing a lot of group shows for a little while, and then I finally took a minute to just make the work that meant something important to me. And Alan came up and offered me the show, so it worked out perfectly. So that's kind of my history here. And yeah, I hope that kind of covers some of my bases.
Mm-hmm. I'm always curious. There are certain paths in life that are perhaps more difficult to try to pursue than other paths. And being an artist has always seemed to me to be a very bold choice. I mean, the deck is stacked against artists. Forget about being famous or super successful. I mean, just being able to do that job and make a living is a real testament to somebody's success. Why would you do something so hard, Val?
I think this is kind of the only thing I have. I mean, I think I'm a really smart, wonderful little lady, but I do think that the way I live my life is very much how you see me is how I am, and I think there's not really a lot of places that like really pushy, loud little ladies. So I think being an artist has kind of been perfect for me. And you're absolutely right. It's not easy. It's a lot of weird little obstacles, but it's for the people who have no choice in what they're doing with themselves. I think I think about myself, and I feel like the life I live is very creative, and I am always looking for different ways to, foster a community of creative people. Art is it, and that's what it is. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, Tony, you've talked about similar feelings when you first started. It wasn't that like this was something you made a conscious choice, but something that you felt you needed to do.
Yeah, I mean, I always told Val, artists, this is the road for people who have no choice. I had somebody ask me once, did you ever have a plan B? Did you ever think of maybe doing something else? And honestly, I don't think I ever gave it any thought. I just, it was going to be this. That was it.
So you have expanded your repertoire. I mean, you're an actor, you're a poet, you're a playwright, You're a muralist, as well as the other kind of art you do. So you have found other avenues.
But I always think of it as all part of the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's all part of the body of work. And I look at Val's work, and from knowing her, she's been working with me for over a year now, and has this ferocious work ethic. She comes and is, without a doubt, the greatest assistant I've ever had. Smart, when I'm working on something and I need an opinion, she doesn't pull any punches. She will tell you. She will tell you exactly what she thinks, and having that kind of honesty and is important. I'm 66 years old, and going into the autumn of my career, I need the best information I could get, and having somebody young and with it all in front of them is just inspiring.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. And as we get older, Tony, it's important to have younger people in our lives because pretty soon all of our friends are going to start dying off here. And that.
Plus, also, Joan, as you get older, you become a little bit overly fond of what you already know.
Yes.
And believe me, that there are many trapdoors with that kind of thinking. We need look no further than Donald Trump and the selection of dopes that surround him for people who are hardened into a way of thinking that is, cemented in the middle of the last century. And what we need, what you need as you grow older, is you need intellectual fluidity, and you need to be able to change. You need to be able to adapt. You need to be able to say, you know what, I never thought of it that way. Let me add this to the way I practice my life.
Yeah. And, we're seeing what you're just describing in politics right now, where people are looking at the party leaders and those people in office, and they're saying, you know what, we need the Maxwell Frosts. We need the young leaders who are going to be stepping up, and we need to give them the opportunity to have those positions of power. I mean, I'm sure you saw where, David Hogg has now been elected to like a vice presidential or supportive position for the DNC. He's going to be working with Ken Martin. And a lot of people are very interested in seeing how this younger generation plays out. I mean, you probably heard this, Tony, that when the Democratic governors had that phone call with Chuck Schumer a week or so ago, and they were like, dude, what are you doing? And one of the things Chuck Schumer said to them is, well, Cory Booker is really good at social media, and he put together a PowerPoint presentation for the rest of us to, teach us how to do this. And I just thought to myself, oh, my God, seriously?
No, what Chuck Schumer needs to go and do is go in there and slap them around. Go in there and then prove that as Democrats, we have a big, mean dog that we can let off the leash.
The senator from, oh, my God, is it Connecticut or Delaware? One of the East Coast states. And weeks ago, he was going in front of cameras, and he was almost screaming, where are the Democrats? Where are the people who are going to resist? I was talking to somebody who had familiarity with a previous Democratic administration, and they said, hate him or love him, Mitch McConnell, even though he was the leader of the minority, used every procedural trick on the books, every parliamentary maneuver. He made life difficult for us. We had the majority, but he made us pay for everything we tried to get done. He made it slow. He made it painful. They resisted. And that's what we need from the Democrats.
Joan, we used to have guys like that. We used to have Jimmy Carville. We had tacticians. We had brilliant men. And for some reason, they're all invisible now. Al Franken got, Me Too'd with, I think, to a ridiculous extent. You need a pit bull.
Even some of the Democrats back then, like Kirsten Gillibrand, who said, Al Franken really should resign. A bunch of them, in retrospect, have said, you know what? We should have let the process play out, because there was a lot of rumor floating around that it was a concerted attack by conservative Republicans to try to get rid of him. At least one of the women who came out against him was a conservative, like she was either a radio host or she was a frequent conservative radio voice. I agree with you. Where are the people? If Al Franken wants to come back and start ragging on these people, I'm there for that.
Hey, God bless Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. You know, she's the only one standing up to these people.
Yes, she is.
And yeah, you know, all 5 feet and 90 pounds of her, she doesn't back up a step. You know, I mean, she's like a pit bull. She hangs in there. Mm-hmm. It's like, give me 50 just like her, and we can win this thing.
Yeah. You know, let's consult the young person in the conversation. Val, I know you've been really busy getting this show together, which probably means that you haven't been hanging on every single article that's been written about politics in the last few weeks. But when you see the way things are right now, what strikes you? What would you like to see happen? What are you worried is going to happen?
I'm just shocked at the lack of empathy and humanity towards our, neighbors. You know, it's like I don't understand how things are just being just discarded, like human rights, and I'm shocked at it every day. I mean, it's give me 1 second. I think, I don't know. I truly would like to see people just kind of, learn how to see that just because it's not a life that they're living, that you can't care for others in either positions that are less fortunate than you or just less privileged than you.
Yeah. The whole idea of immigrants being villainized and scapegoated. This is right out of the Trump playbook from last time. It's like he relieves, white middle Americans of the responsibilities of their own choices. It's like, okay, you chose only to learn this much, and your job got, because of globalization, your job got sent overseas. It's not your fault. It's the fault of the immigrants. It's the fault of the Muslims, the women. It's, it's the Mexicans. It's
the transgender people, too. Don't forget them.
Oh, absolutely. And the whole gay community, which he is at war with right now. It's like, as somebody who employs, trans people, gay people, I'm offended by this. Particularly as an American, this is not who we are. This is not us at our best as a country or body politic.
Yep. I do think that we want, regardless of what you think about whether or not there's government waste or whether government needs to be shook up, the casual cruelty that Donald Trump brought to this country in his first term, that should have been enough to keep him from a second term. But you know what? He was up against a woman of color. And I think that the worst of humanity erupted against that. I was talking to Greg Palast, who's an investigative reporter for the BBC. He also believes that Republican efforts in various states at voter suppression, let's make it difficult for the black people. We're only going to give them one polling place. Let's put all these ID requirements in place. Let's strike people off the voter rolls without any proof that they are not who they say they are or live where they say they are. He believes that voter suppression played a huge role. And what scared me is he said, people are talking about, well, Donald Trump will, change the laws to stay in office. And he said, if the voter suppression continues to ramp up without being stopped, he said, we may never see a Democrat elected to high office ever again. He said when you really dig into it, he said it was staggering, the voter suppression in this last election. So, people have to wake up and get involved.
Well, one must applaud.
Oh, Tony, we lost you, and Val, you were kind of cutting in and out, so I'm going to thank both Tony Fitzpatrick, our artist and friend, and Valeria Terrazas. If you want to see her solo exhibit, it will be at VSG Contemporary Gallery, 673 North Milwaukee. Tomorrow, the opening is 6 to 9. We're going to take a break, and I'll wrap things up right after this.
If you've missed any of today's show, you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Amazon, or HeartlandSignal.com. Just search for Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive.
Chicago's Progressive Talk, WCPT 820, where facts matter.
This is Joan Esposito, live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Thank you so much for being a part of this show this week. I couldn't do it without you. Thank you. And unless you have to work this weekend, and if you do, we thank you for that. If you do have a weekend off, please find something that brings you joy. Maybe seeing Val Terrazas' work at the VSG Gallery will be that thing. Maybe it'll be something else. Maybe you'll go out to have dinner with a friend. Maybe you'll go to a performance of some kind. Maybe you'll walk over to the library and find a new book. You know, finding something that brings you joy doesn't have to be something big. It can be something very tiny. The joy is the important part. Patty Vasquez is going to be up next. She has a guest host. Joe Kilgallen is back. They are going to be talking to author Liza Monroy, who wrote a book about how technology enables obsession. Gee, how timely. Saturday, Edwin's got some great guests. Catherine Hayhoe, North Carolina Democratic Party Chair, Anderson Clayton, and Abraham Newman, who's the director of the BMW Center for German and European Studies at Georgetown University. Michelle Peltier was going to be sitting in for Richard on Monday, but she is always fun. Please, tune in Monday at 6 a.m. after you've had your really joyous weekend, which you're about to embark upon. And then I will see you Monday at 2 p.m. I'm going to be talking to, among many other people, remember Rich Logis, the founder of Leaving MAGA? Yeah. See where his head is at these days. Again, have a great weekend. Find something that brings you joy. And if you need to spend a little time away from the news about politics, I get that. But there's a couple of big judicial things that are going to be coming down. So, if you feel like paying attention, there's going to be plenty to pay attention to. Have a great weekend. I will see you Monday. Good night.